want me to sing when I get their attention. Okay. Should be good? Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the UBC Youth Circle. And I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping rules. For the Adobe Connect, those are the people that are connected via the computer. If you could please, we aren't able to fully interact with you, so if you have a question in the classroom, you can put up your hand and the person that's operating the computer will type in the question, and we have technical support here in the room, Catherine Berry, our program assistant, and she will actually relay the question to us, to Alissa, and what was the other one, Catherine? Okay, so we're ready to start today. My name is Crystal Morris. I'm the Aboriginal Education Coordinator for the School of Population and Public Health. Welcome to our circle, and I'd like to recognize the traditional territory that our office here at the UBC Learning Circle resides, which is the Musqueam Nation Territory. So welcome, and at this point in time, I'm actually going to turn the floor over to Alissa Derrick, who's going to introduce herself. In addition to that, I want to apologize for running late just a little bit today, and thank you for joining us, and I look forward to today's session. So Alissa, Derrick, I'll let you take the floor.
Hi everyone, my name is Alissa Derrick. I am a third-year criminology student at SFU, double minor in First Nation Studies and Women's Studies. I currently work at the Vancouver Aboriginal Friendship Centre as a program coordinator for the Healthy and Holistic Aboriginal Families program. In addition, I am also a research assistant with Dr. Michelle Pigeon at Simon Fraser University, researching why Aboriginal students stay and leave university. Would you like me to elaborate more, or can I just go vanish into full detail?
Yes, you can go right into your presentation.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I've been thinking about this quite a bit actually with former students who I know at UBC, as well as SFU and Langara, and how do I start this topic, and how do I, build it into education. And where we began was stories of how you get here. And so I thought I would start with my home community and kind of give a little bit of condensed detail about my life and how I've come here. And I've gone to university and I've gone to nationals, and I'm running my own program now at 21 tomorrow. So it started in Smithers. I was born in Prince Rupert, and I grew up in Smithers, and I lived there until I was in middle school. And it's an interesting town. It's unique. For a lot of small communities, you can definitely relate. It began with elementary school, and then I jumped into middle school in Chandler before it shut down. And there was a lot of, and maybe I didn't recognize it, there was a lot of racism that was going on. And unfortunately, there was at one point in the academic year that I can recall being choked up to a locker by another Aboriginal student. And, I touched in it about, I lost a bit of sense of direction where I was going in terms of culture and in terms of academics. There wasn't much to do in Smithers except for in the summertime to play baseball and to do all those things. But during the school year in the winter, I started to get into pot and a lot of drugs and drinking and skipping classes. And it got bad to the point where I needed to leave. I needed to move towns, and so I moved to Prince Rupert. I lived with my Asian side. I transferred from my First Nations to my Asian side, and I went there and thought, to start over and to play badminton. I went to school there, and unfortunately, during my time there, I was in grade 10, and my father had committed suicide when I was 15, and it's a huge transition, because you need to deal with the fact of living on your own now and being able to go to school. And following that, 3 months later, unfortunately, my grandfather passed away from a heart attack. And then following that, 3 months later, me and my ex-boyfriend of 3 years had separated. There was just way too much going on. It was too many transitions, and I was really, really losing myself. And developing from that was an eating disorder, and my life was going through a huge transition, and the only way that I could deal with it at that time was to work and to run. So for any of you who know of Prince Rupert and Port Ed, and you know that that's about a 20-kilometer one way, I used to run there and back on the weekends just to like de-stress. So running 4K during the weekends, 40, sorry. And then in the summertime of my grade 11 year, I took another huge jump, and I was working 3 jobs, and for the entire summer, and trying to support myself at 15, living on my own. And I had 2 days off, and I was Googling a whole bunch of things and seeing where can I go for my 2 days off. Like, where could I fly? Is there any cool like cultural events I could go to? And there was a badminton camp in Terrace, 2-hour drive. So I hopped on a train, and I asked to be billeted with a badminton family there, and that's where I met my future coach, who is my coach right now, and I loved it, and I had so much passion for it. And he said, well, why don't you apply for the North American Indigenous Games? It's in 2 months, and he extended the offer if I love badminton so much, move to Vancouver. And I'm thinking, who is this random white guy telling me to move to Vancouver and just leave my town? And he gave me an opportunity to train. And so anyways, I ended up going to the North American Indigenous Games. I got accepted. I got a silver, bronze, and a gold there, and it was the most amazing experience ever. It kind of made me realize how much I was missing out in terms of culture, in terms of academics and sports, and this is what I wanted. I wanted to go to school and just to play badminton more than anything at that point in time. And then when I moved here, I ended up staying with the president of Badminton BC, and they were so kind enough to help me find an athletics, I don't know really what they're called now, the names have changed, but basically like a foster athletic family. Their daughters that I was staying with were really naturally great soccer players and actresses. So I stayed there, and the transition from a small town to the city at 16 was huge. I was in culture shock in the worst way. I went to school with 1,500 students, jumping, from 600 students, and I was one of 4 Aboriginal students in my school, and it was a huge shock, as well as badminton. There's a lot of jokes about it, but badminton is predominantly Asian all across the board. And so when I was training on my team, it was difficult. There was different values and different morals, and I found that I was losing myself, even though I was training, competing for nationals, because none of them could relate. None of them could relate to abuse or sexual abuse or deaths or ceremony or just what's the most polite way to say this, just kind of the crap that goes on in just reality of it. To live in a skip generation home with your grandmother raising you, or one parent or one mom being in rehab, or one family member being dead or alcoholics. Like, to them, that they learn about that in the textbook. Like, they could not fathom this. This is not a part of their reality. And so when I came here to play badminton, it was a shock. I was pretending to be someone who I wasn't, and it took me quite a few years to kind of overcome that. And so anyways, as I started competing in nationals, it was, my coach encouraged me to go get a GP, a family doctor, and get all these tests done. And my GP was, wow, you have such high blood pressure. And at first I was thinking, oh man, this is a problem, because, diabetes and high blood pressure, it's an alarming rate for Aboriginal people right now. And so we kept following up tests, and we ended up finding out that I had renal failure. And so renal failure is when both your kidneys are starting to disintegrate. They cannot function at the regular capacity. And so we said, okay, like, what's the next step? What can I do? I can't dwell on it. This is the reality of the situation. And they said, you know what, you'll have until you're 30, roughly 30. Like, you can live healthy, do school, be in nationals, work. And I was like, okay, good. I can finish my bachelor's, you know, I can go straight into my master's, worry about it later. Didn't quite pan out that way. I was at Langara College, which I actually ended up going to Langara only because of badminton. And halfway through my time there, or 3/4, sorry, I received a phone call in December of 2011 saying, you know, we're just kidding, but you actually do need a transplant relatively soon. Your GFR level, which is your kidney function level, was going down faster than they could help me. And so I thought, okay, I'm not going to drop out of school. You know, my band has already supported me in being in school, so I'm going to finish my exams. I'm going to finish strong. And I ended up with like an A and some B's. You know, not great, not bad. And I decided to play the Canadian Nationals. My last try, my last chance. I didn't do as well as I had anticipated for my last year, but it was during that process that I had a group of students, some Aboriginal students, which blew my mind away and which has really started to reconnect me to my Aboriginal community, who got tested to be my donors. Absolutely amazing. There's a small group of them from Langara College, and the support worker there, Larry Railton, has done an amazing job with their faculty and with the supports there. And they got tested for me, and I went home. I went home for a couple of reasons. One, I hadn't been home in a while, and I went back to Smithers and Prince Rupert, and I got to hang out with my family, and I was progressively getting sicker. And I got a phone call one day, and one of the students at Langara was a match, and it was amazing. I can't even describe what it feels like. Maybe for some of you guys who play in the All Native, and like maybe winning that first place, that is like the equivalent, and maybe a bit beyond that. And then that summer I had a bit, we were thinking, oh my god, I'm pretty close to die. Both my kidneys were working at 6%, and I ended up with a blood infection in Smithers. And I had to be in the hospital in Prince Rupert, and they didn't know what to do with me because they have no nephrologists, which are kidney specialist doctors, up there to support me. And they were like, okay. So I came back to Vancouver, and then ended up getting food poisoning, and my kidney function took another hit. And my doctors made this joke, 'cause I'm so accident prone. Like, Alissa, please just stay home. Like, you need to be alive for us to do this transplant. And so I came back to Vancouver, and I spent every day with my donor. And we had this inside joke for two people who were doing nothing, and for the first time in my life since 17, every semester, including summers I've been in school. So for me, it was a huge shock in terms of what can I do? I'm missing something. I have academics, I have sports, I'm looking after my health. I felt like I was missing something. And my donor, Adrian Charlie, amazing woman, for obvious reasons and many more, she took me to my first powwow. And it was mind-blowing. Like, it was so amazing, it was so heartfelt. And I got to go to so many events and see different people and see a tribe called Red. You guys should Google them. They're amazing. And I got to, make my first drum. And I got to do a lot of cool things that I really wanted to do. So, where am I now? Stemming from that, I had my transplant, and I lost myself for a good year. And it's been a year and a half since my transplant. I'm just kind of going through the motion and not even being able to comprehend that I've had an organ transplant. Like, my doctors physically cut through my muscle tissue in my stomach and put in my best friend's kidney. Like, it took me a while to really realize that, and I remember feeling such gratitude after my transplant, because things we take for granted, being able to shower by yourself, being able to walk. Now, that's a huge thing for someone who's used to running and playing badminton. I couldn't, they made me walk around like 12 hours after my transplant, and it is the most painful thing, and you appreciate things in such a huge capacity. I can't even put words into it. And so, after my transplant, I was really pushing. I've turned into, I feel like, an overachiever, and I've been in the last couple of years trying to figure out why that is. And I jumped into Langara going in it for all the wrong reasons, and leading up to that is I can give advice is for Aboriginal students and non-Aboriginal students is if you're going to go to school, you go for it for yourself. Do things that you want to do because that's what you want to do, and that don't attribute it to that you're doing this because you want to prove that the statistics are wrong, or that you want to prove that you're not like, you know, what the stereotype Aboriginal person is, and drinking and drugs, that it's not that. And so I went into school, and I went into competing for nationals and working 3 jobs and doing all these crazy things because I really wanted to prove that that wasn't right, that that's not the label, that's not Aboriginal people at all. It's just that we're in a healing period, we're in a generational healing period, and to do things for your own benefit, your own virtue. And so now being at SFU, it's only been in the last few months that I've learned that working 2 jobs, taking 4 courses, working out and squeezing in some time to sit on 8 board committees is psycho. It's not feasible. I do not recommend it. I encourage to be involved in the community because it makes you feel amazing and good. But you also, I feel like this is, this is my opinion, not my opinion of Aboriginal people in general, and just my personality is learning how to take time for yourself and not feeling, guilty that you have to do X, Y, and Z for your community, for your grandmother, but you need to take care of yourself before you can take care of your community, before you can take care of your family. And once you do that, you will realize how quickly and how fast that changes will happen in your family, in your personal life, in your communities. And it's difficult, it's hard to take that. For me, it's hard to take that, okay, I need to go to the gym 4 times a week, even if it's for half an hour, because that's my own mental wellness. And if you want to put this in a scope of a medicine wheel, you need to take care of that component just as equally as important as those other 3 components. So now, being at SFU, I'm learning. I'm always in a learning process, and it's always having to be in a positive mindset. And relaying it back to education, it's been an interesting journey. It really has. Unfortunately, I had my, and everything that I say, I don't mean to say it in a negative light or any mean. It's just the facts. It's just the reality of it, and I'm being, not dwelling on it. Unfortunately, my band funding actually cut me 4 days after my kidney transplant, and I was mind blown. I was like, how is this possible? I jumped in to do my degree at 17, and I don't understand. Like, I couldn't comprehend it. I was like, okay, what am I going to do? And fortunately enough, I applied for scholarships and bursaries the year before. And so all of a sudden, come September, along with working jobs, I was able to put myself through school. And the costs are huge. And I would say that for the biggest barrier for me for being in school, it's not the money. It really isn't, because it's out there for you. There's so many scholarships. I could name 10 off the top of my head, ranging from $1,000 to $5,000 that you can apply for. It's being a sense of belonging and community here, and making the connection with friends, and making that connection with your professors, and just balance, because it is a huge shift. There's no doubt about that. But now I'm losing myself as to where I was going with this. I was trickling to school, and
you're talking about the culture and tying in the culture and belonging to community. That's the piece you were missing, and you were finding those.
Right. Okay. So I'm trying to connect this. Sorry, I just had 5 hours of stats at 5 in the morning, so I've just got here, so I'm recovering. For that is, going back to school, and, of course, I want to encourage all Aboriginal youth to go to school and be educated, but keeping in mind education could mean your culture. It can mean revitalizing your language. Education can mean being an artist. But for me, education, I'm choosing to be in the post-secondary and, to do a degree, but that it was difficult for me because there's no sense of culture and commitment. So on top of my transplant, and on top of, losing a lot of friends, because you will, after high school, you will trickle out of friends, and it's a difficult phase. And on top of that, add a dying friend into that mix, and you'll lose a little more friends. But it's amazing that you will realize eventually, as you get older, that it could take a handful of friends, and you could be the happiest person. And I have a solid group of 10 friends, and I have many acquaintances, many acquaintances. But it's the close friends that are amazing, and fortunately enough, they are actually all Aboriginal students. I have some amazing best friends that are not Aboriginal, but in finding my connection to my community and to culture, it's definitely been amazing to have them. And so when we talk about we often talk about being in the education system and what's missing and what's being misguided, and going to forums to try and change it. And a lot of it is definitely the resources and supports that are in university for when you guys want to come. And that's all about what my research is right now, which is amazing. Is being a part of that. And so I've lost my way a little bit after my transplant, and it was mainly about I was scared to die. I finally, a year after my transplant, I was scared to die. And so this last year, now it's been a year and a half, so I wanted to do everything. I wanted to experience everything. I wanted to do everything. I looked at my list and I was like, okay, I've gone to nationals 4 times. Boom, that's out of the door. I've got my diploma. Okay, that's done. I can finish my degree and squeeze it in and go straight into my master's of public and social policy. I want to feel and experience everything, and that's why I jumped on all these cultural coordinator positions, program coordinator positions, and because I was like, you know what? If I theoretically, if I die, I've lived an amazing life because I've got to experience being a part of different communities, and by communities I mean not only Aboriginal but just communities in general in Vancouver, and it was been amazing. But now I've realized a year and a half later, I've got some time. I don't need to do 1,000,001 things, and to be happy and to do things that are for me. And as much as I love helping people, which I'm sure Crystal, in the short time that we've met, can attest to that, is that I have time and I can always go back and do things that I want to do in the future, and really work towards that. And so there's some key things that I really want to pull out here, and that's being able to say and to recognize, okay, this is what has happened in my family, whether it's been loss or death, because all of these components are part of grief. And you can grieve about anything. You can grieve about failing. You can grieve about a loss in a basketball game. You can grieve about a death in the family. And these all cycle in a stage, and you need to be able to identify this and be able to go through all of the cycles of healing. And to take time, it takes time. I can't say that when I moved here, I didn't expect my grandmother to get cancer and me to be able to be in grade 12, train 30 hours a week, and then take my grandma to chemotherapy. It's difficult. And so all of this has taken years. And years, I mean, this has all been condensed in 4 years, but it takes time, and it takes time for different people, but to always remember that, to keep an end goal there, and to keep that in mind. If it's written, journaling, if it's smudging and doing a prayer every night, whether it's running and you need to do these things, but to always keep it in perspective that it's a process. It's a process of healing. It's a process of getting to your goals. And for some, it'll take 20, 30 years, 5 months, a year. It's all dependent on your positive thoughts and what you want to do. And I'm not going to say that there wasn't low moments, because I'm super appreciative of life right now, but I totally can recognize that I feel like everyone has this common sense, and it's universal, and that's everyone wants to be loved. And to not feel that in your community, not to feel that within yourself, within your family, I understand it. I genuinely do, and I'm at the process of learning that, you know, how can I love people around me and help the communities and do things without loving myself. And you know, I sit on a lot of a lot of committees here in Vancouver, and I can give an example of NAG. I'm a part of the Aboriginal Provincial Committee for the upcoming North American Indigenous Games, and I'm looking at all the athletes, and I'm thinking I can really identify and really see which athletes are, they're there because they feel loved, they're there because this is their passion, and they're there because they want that, and everyone wants that, and it's a matter of being able to recognize that. And you know, and in the past, sorry to jump back and forth, sure, but in the past, you know, I had an eating disorder develop, and I didn't know what that was. It wasn't talked about in my town, it wasn't talked about in school. It's not something most girls recognized in a small town, so when I moved to the city, it was really relevant. And for girls, it's like for me, it was a control. I couldn't control anything in my life, and the only healthy outlets that I had when I was younger was an eating disorder and was, you know, smoking pot and skipping class, because these are things that I had control over. But over time, I realized there's a lot you have control over. You have control to go to class every day. You have control to ask for help. You have control to join a sports team if that's not ready, available for you because of financing. And you can always go to your local friendship center and ask, what is there? How can I apply for money to do sports, or how can I do something? You know, there is always that possibility. And for me, it took a little guidance and support, but recognizing that badminton had to be my outlet, exercise had to be my outlet, but also to find things that are non-physical that can keep you motivated and sound as a whole person. And I really discovered that after my transplant, not being able to work out 30 hours a week and go to school, I had a difficult transition. And that's what led me to 3 jobs and 8 board committees. And now it's time to reevaluate and refigure out, okay, let's drop it down to 1 job, 4 courses, and maybe 3 board committees instead of a million and one that I do.
Do you sleep?
Do I sleep? Oh God. You know what? Someone said I wasn't human the other day. I had another Aboriginal student who I mentor. I'm also a mentor at SFU, and you know, they're like, "Are you human? Like, is this
Hang on. I want to see if you sparkle.
Yeah, I can. Oh, Twilight. Oh,
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's potential. It's possibility. But so I don't know. I feel like that's my life. And obviously that's a really condensed, short version, and you know, issues dig a lot deeper like that into my life, as do they do in your own personal lives or your community or your family. And right now, it's being able to. I'm in a position right now of like separating what's going on with my family and how do I do that, as well as be my own person and my own physical well-being, because this incorporates both not into Aboriginal communities but as well as non-Aboriginal communities, to be able to do things for you, and you realizing that by going to class and going to school or choosing to do alternative methods that aren't self-destructive, you have to do that because you want to do that, and you have to do that before you can help your family. And it's a difficult thing because there's so much help and need in Aboriginal communities right now, and it's to really focus on the fact that as a community we can't get better if we individually don't work together and we don't focus on the issues and the problems around the post effects of residential school or the socioeconomic of Aboriginal people right now. And it'll take time, and you know, for some people there's a lot of anger in that, and I'm just trying to think. You need to remove that anger. You need to remove anger from everything that you do before you can really genuinely do things. And so that also takes time. So is there any questions?
Is there any questions or comments? Is there any questions or comments here in the room? We do have a couple of youth here in the room with us today. Any comments from any of the classrooms that are joining us, or any comments that you would like to make? If you would just get your instructor to type it into the computer, and we can relay a comment to Alissa.
It takes a minute to type things in.
Oh, no worries. I'm just gonna give you my typical day that until questions come storming in. This morning, I got up at 6 in the morning to meet my stats tutor, and I was like dreading it. Like, stats is the one thing I will recognize. I'm not very good at math. I can be good at many things, but I have to accept this. It's taking me a lot more time than I would like. And I'm drive to school, and then I'm coming here to do this, and then right after this, I'm going to be making shepherd's pie at the Friendship Center for a program that I run from 5 to 8, and then do my online class after that, and get an agenda. Everyone. You need it. You really do. So.
Yes. I guess you brought up a couple of topics definitely that I know we've discussed in our discussions.
Yeah.
And definitely with the eating disorders and recognizing that. Like, did you have professional help with that, or just the?
You know what? It was interesting. When it developed, my coach had noticed it, and he was, we had discussed openly, like, why are you training 30, 40 hours a week and you're not losing weight, but you're gaining weight? Like, this makes no sense at all. And so he told me to go to a doctor, and so we had to, we did. And unfortunately in BC, for those of you who live in the Lower Mainland and young women that deal with eating disorders, we're lucky because St. Paul's is the provincial organization for eating disorders, but that doesn't help if you're in small communities and there's nothing there. And so I tried probably 5 different programs since I've been here in Vancouver, but it was hard because they were treating me as if I was living with my parents, developing a food plan as if this is what I really eat. And it was interesting. I had to really take components of it. I had to take a little bit of what some people might call Western components and really indigenize them or make them my own, if not cultural. And it took me a bit of practice, and it's taking me a bit of time to do this because it's a process. It's a control tactic, as most eating disorders are. And athletes unfortunately develop them at a higher rate. On top of being a female athlete, it made it really surreal for me because I was on a team with a lot of petite Asian girls, and it was like it was just stressful. And so we tried 5, 6, 7 different programs here during my first 2 years of Langara, and they just weren't working for me. And so finally I decided from that time to take components of that and to really work with it and to really focus on taking that time for me. And so medically, unfortunately, it didn't work out, but being involved in that and recognizing I know what resources are there, and to understand what resources are out there for you, whether it's an eating disorder, whether it's a drinking and alcohol problem, whether it's substance abuse in general, is to take that step and to move into finding out what's there. And it won't work for you. Not all of them will work for you, but for the ones that do work for you, it will take time. You have to mold it to make it your own in order for it to work. And so now that's the part that I'm at, is I make it work. I've made it work to incorporate. I would never go by what they were recommending, steak and cooking it all and freezer packing it. Like, I'm thinking that is definitely not, I would open a jar of salmon, like that's like, I don't. I would never go buy, steak. But anyway, so to answer your question, I used medical support, and I went through that system, but it was also difficult because I I didn't outsource enough. I didn't realize that there was an Aboriginal patient navigator during my transplant and during my process of the eating disorder. And I've actually only learned about it because one of my clients at the Friendship Center, unfortunately, is going through cancer. So that's how I found out that it was there, because it was my job to find out it was there. But to treat problems like that, like an eating disorder or anything, because it is your job. It's your job. It's your, it's your personal health. It's your responsibility, and you have to treat it as such because it's so important. And so that is how I managed and found out about what's there, and it's been an interesting journey for sure.
So do you think a piece of all of this was recognizing that inside you talked about needing and knowing and feeling that you needed more, the more of the cultural connections? Do you think that there was some direct correlation there?
There was a huge tie because it's a lesson to it's not present in my life, and it's amazing. It's amazing because it was definitely the ability to connect with my grandmother and reconnect to language and culture, and there was just a huge component I felt that was missing, because I'm living in so many different worlds. I'm living in a world where half of my family is Vietnamese, so I have all of the traditional Asian beliefs, where at 15 before my dad passed away, I was kicked out of my house for secretly going away to a badminton tournament because women are expected to go to school, become educated, but then it's ironic because in my family, they kind of expect you to be a stay-at-home mom. So, and then there's my other side where, it's my Aboriginal side, and I'm the reality of it. I will be the first one to graduate high school. I'll be the first one to graduate with my degree and my diploma, and to mesh these worlds together. And during this huge crazy time was the transition of family, and I call them my adoptive family, and they are white, and they've seen me grow up as a girl, and they've really helped me mold and transition into the woman I'm becoming. But without them, how do you work in these 3 different worlds? And now I'm jumping into 4 different worlds once you're in school. Is how do youth who are so lost in Aboriginal communities, or just in general, and dealing with a lot of crap that goes on at home, when you're dealing with 2 worlds, your Aboriginal side of your family, and then being in school, because it is really hard to relate with other students when you want to talk about certain things, and that's where I'm being able to recognize it now. It's difficult to talk about, hey, I just went to a Tribe Called Red, or hey, I just went to this awesome powwow, or I went to this awesome conference, or me and my grandmother did this, or I find it really difficult, and that's okay. There's people, I like to look at it as people. It's not that people are ignorant, they just don't know. They really don't. And so I always like to keep that in mind when I talk to people, and to lead up to an example of that, unfortunately I had a really bad experience last Friday. And so I was studying at a cafe until about 2 in the morning at a 24-hour cafe downtown Vancouver, right across from SFU campus, and I thought, okay, I'm not gonna bus home right now, clubs are closing. I was trying to be really smart about this, and so I called a cab, and a cab showed up. And as a student, and I'm sure as many of you might know, when you want to come to school, sometimes you don't look the best. Your typical massive all-native hoodie that had the dates at the back, and my basketball sweatpants, and I was not looking that great. I can guarantee that. And so I jumped in this cab, and 2 red lights, later, the cab driver demanded to see cash. So I'm thinking in my mind, I'm okay, I don't have cash, and I'm explaining to him, and that I have my MasterCard, and I have my status card. So that's all I had on me, because when I'm downtown, there's no way I'm going to carry cash on me that late at night. I'm not going to bring my whole wallet. And I had my Mac and my brand new iPhone, because unfortunately,
you lost your iPhone. That's
unfortunately, my iPhone, there was a little miss event to losing my phone. And I can speak to that in a few minutes. And so I'm talking with him, and I'm like, you know what? I can give you my status card. I will give you my status card, and I will go and leave my backpack here. I will leave all of my textbooks, which are hundreds of dollars, like, you know. But I'll take my Mac and my iPhone and put it in my house. And we just started to get into this huge disagreement, and he was just like, I will not take your status card. It's not real ID. And usually I'm very sound about figuring out situations. I'm very logical, and at this point I was angry. I was mad, and I was livid, and I was like, there's no way. And he was wanting my Mac, my iPhone, to keep it as
security
for payment. And I was thinking, there's no way. There's absolutely no way I'm going to hand over $2,000 and go to my house and get cash. Anyways, he unfortunately asked me to leave his cab after a few disagreements at 2:30 in the morning at Main and Hastings. And for those of you who don't know what Main and Hastings is in Vancouver, it is the poorest and most dangerous postal code area, and I mean that in terms of just condensed crime rate. And anyways, he left me in that area, and I just like sat and hung out at Main and Hastings, and I was like literally almost in tears. Not because I was scared to be at Main and Hastings, because those are the clients that I work with. I'm surrounded by Aboriginal people at Main and Hastings, and I'm thinking, well, nothing can go wrong, and that's a really naive thing of me to say. I was upset because I was like, I wanted an apology from him. I demanded an apology because that was, you know, I wasn't mad. I didn't want, you know, and so I ended up calling the company, and they ended up calling me back, and they wanted me to sign a non-disclosure form. In my mind, I'm thinking, no, this is definitely not about money. And so I started thinking about this, about treaties and about land claims and about Aboriginal people. And maybe I've taken one too many philosophy classes, but I really started to delve into this issue. And I was like, no, there's no way I'm going to accept X amount of dollars for non-disclosure and not to speak about this. And it's not because I'm a crim student, and it's because it was the principle of it. And this is kind of the key component I want people to take from the stories, the principle behind the actions that we do. Because as Aboriginal people, when you do things, you're not only representing yourself and your own integrity, but unfortunately society will claim you as you're representing an entire Aboriginal group, and that's just the reality of it, and it takes some time to really recognize that. And I called the company. I was like, this is not what I want. I was like, I want an apology because what he did was wrong. It was, you know, and so I went on Facebook that night, and I did a little bend. There was no swear words, there was no slurs. It was very, you know, but that also made me think. It made me think about, I have to watch what I put on Facebook. It's there forever, and you know, I think about all the times in high school during all-native tournaments or just graduation, how many crazy photos go on Facebook, and how dangerous that is to like your integrity and like your future. You have no idea. And I can build into that a bit later, but I ended up calling back the company, and so tomorrow I'm gonna go meet with this fellow and the director of the company to receive a written apology letter.
And you're bringing 2 big natives with you, right?
No, I'm gonna go in by myself. I'm a strong woman. I can do this by myself.
Yay,
and I was like,
wow.
and I called the company. I was like, it's not about the money, and I can prove this to you because I want him to apologize. And it's not even just the apology. It's more of, I will sit down and have tea and coffee with this guy and talk to him a little bit about. I totally recognize what he must feel, because he wouldn't treat me like this unless he's had previous experience. But I want to leave him with a positive experience. I want to leave him with an experience that not all Aboriginal people are like this, and to explain the healing process, because a lot of immigrants and new people coming to Canada, even people who've lived here for generations, don't understand. And I can give an example. My family, who came here from Vietnam, have no idea. When I had my transplant, they were like, no, it has to be your native side. My Asian side. Or no, my native side. No, it has to be the Asians. Like, just an interesting concept of just not being aware and knowledgeable about an issue. So now, elaborating onto a second story is my cell phone with Crystal. Now, I run a program by myself with the support of 2 workers at the Friendship Center here in Vancouver, and I'm laughing at this story because it's really, I've taken it in the most positive light, and I work really closely with 5 families, and they each are amazing, and each of them are struggling with either selling drugs at Main and Hastings, or prostitution, or cancer,
living out of their van,
divorce. So I deal with some pretty heavy caseloads that I'm trying to support, and one evening, I've gotten to know them over the last 6 months, and so I'm pretty close with them. And one evening after we made some candy apples, and everyone had left, and there was no new families, no new kids in the program, my phone was gone. And I'm thinking, it probably died. My alarm to take my anti-rejection medicine, it probably died. I'm thinking, oh man, Alissa, you're really losing it. That totally was not the case. Definitely someone stole it from my program. And it was so funny because my coworkers were so mad for me. And I was thinking, all right, this isn't, for me, I'm thinking about a deeper issue. And it's about, A, they just wanted to take the phone, just to take it and to sell it or to use it. Or B, which is after working with a lot of the youth and really recognizing there's a need there. There is an in-depth and rooted need that is going on there. And what is it? Is it that there's not enough support happening at home, or that the program is ending? And I'm seeing families go into chaos as this program is about to end, because this is the rawness of this community that's being built. And I know a couple of boys who have shown up every Thursday night from 5 to 10 p.m. 9 p.m. to be in this program and to cook and to learn about nutrition. And so I wasn't angry. I really wasn't. At first I was like, this is a really expensive $600 mistake on both parties. And it was to not be mad. The lesson was really, you can't, yes, anger is a part of a cycle that you need to deal with when issues arise, but you can't be mad about it because shit happens. That's just the reality of it, and to learn and to learn from it, and to really recognize that I needed to work with this group in a different capacity. I needed to figure out, what needs needed to be met, and so I started, looking around, and we found different grant money to keep the program running. So now I'm seeing this other shift in families where now they're becoming even more involved and even more engaged, because they're thinking, this is amazing. And I honestly would recommend a program like this in every Aboriginal community because having said that little boy that comes, and he's 7 years old, and he walks home every night with his older brother who's 9 years old by themselves. And it's weird because it's so natural. They've been doing it since, God, for them it's been time immemorial, but for me I was freaking out because I'm like, I'm gonna drive these boys home, but they didn't trust me to drive them home. And I couldn't believe this. I was like, gonna offer them a ride home, making sure they got home, but is that they have a community in that area, where they know someone at every block, and it's weird for me, because for me I'm very mother-like. I have to take them home. But anyways, the takeaway from that story is the process of being mad, and to really recognize that you need to effectively deal with things, and then that to be mad over $600, I look at it this way: in your grand scheme of life, in point A you're born to the point B that you die, what is $600? For me, I value time with my grandmother way more than I do $600. I value my time with these families, which unfortunately my phone was stolen, than actually the physical component of $600. And so I'm still laughing about it.
Yes.
So stuff happens, but I don't know. Where else can we elaborate that you would like to maybe jump into?
I think, speaking from personal experience, and I don't know how many of the students, and how I don't even, my daughter's sitting here, and my niece, and talking about asking for help I know I actually had a hard time. I was actually a mature student returning to university before I actually learned to ask for help. It was actually a non-native co-student of mine that said I need to ask for help because English was an area in college that I struggled with. So speaking from personal experience, and I know we've had some conversations about some of the resource books and, moving to Vancouver, but even a message, to the students about asking for help and feeling comfortable asking for help. And I mean, if you can't ask your parents, there's Aboriginal support workers and there's First Nations and your teacher. Sometimes, that's a barrier for individuals, right? Even it could be a teacher that you don't get along the best with, but why is that? Maybe it's more help is needed in that area. If you could expand and talk a little bit about asking for help and feeling comfortable, because I know I wasn't, and I would have probably benefited long before my college years if somebody had said it's okay to ask for help and put your hand out.
I think it's an interesting time because when I was in middle school in Chandler, I could see professors being like, man, this girl is lost. I was dealing with issues of sexual abuse at the time, and I opened up to one teacher at that point, and I ended up becoming very close and not really recognizing that I needed help. And for me, especially after my dad died, and I was already living on my own when I was 15, and I'm doing the whole living thing that that everyone that's young wants to do. You guys want to, even I myself, I was like, oh yeah, I want to hurry up, I want to live on my own, and it's it's a little more difficult than that. It's expensive. It's you need to figure out a lot of things, and it's hard. For me, it was always hard, and to this day, it's really hard. It's human nature for me, and maybe for some other people, is like the resistancy to ask for help, because I can give it a personal experience in my family, residential school. For some components of my family, it's difficult for them to ask for help because asking for help means dealing with non-Aboriginal sectors, whether that means the healthcare, the education, sports, and it can be really difficult. But there's also something more beautiful about that when you do ask for help, that Aboriginal or not Aboriginal, and that's the fact that that's your opportunity and that's your chance and your time to break down those stereotypes and to really work one-on-one with, whether it be your teachers or your coach, your own family, and saying, I need help, and it can be in different capacities. And the benefits are huge, and there's no one that can do it better and ask for help, because no one's going to know what's going on with you. No one's going to know that, that abuse is happening in your home if you don't ask for help. And there is some hesitancy because of MCFD and being in foster homes and foster care, but having said all of that, is that I look at it as that's my chance, this is my opportunity to help the helpers build better resources. So if let's do a theoretical example here, being young, Aboriginal student, smoking pot and using excessive drinking to solve a lot of stuff, and you go into a detox program, or you go into an out-based community program, and it's not working for you. That's your chance to really work with them, because there are resources, there are grants, there are people out there who care, people out there that they want to make a system that works. We don't, systems aren't in place, and programs aren't in place to watch you fail, to watch this really not work for another community. They're there because they need help. They're basing this off of non-Aboriginal programming. If it's culture components that you need into a program, tell them that. If there's ways to work around that, that's the beauty of it, is you can really mask a lot of programs to your needs. And it's about using your voice, and it's about using your voice in an effective, positive manner. And I know that can be hard, because in the moment you're so angry, and there's a lot going on, and you're bitter and you're mad, but to really engage in a more positive light rather than saying, this is going wrong, and now this program's not working. But when you ask for help, to recognize it won't be a quick fix. It's a journey like everything else. It's a journey just like from kindergarten to grade 12. There's some really great moments and there's some really crappy moments when you do your homework the night before, but so yeah.
So I guess when you talk about, okay, you touched on MCFD, so were you in the system? Like, I mean,
funny story.
Before you were 15, like, I mean, you're pretty young. Like, to me, you're still pretty young.
I know. All my friends at UBC are like 27. They're like, oh, you're the baby out of us. You know what? I guess I was. I don't know. So let me think about this. So my grandmother took care of us, and by us I mean my brothers and sisters, by herself when we were younger.
And how many?
5. And my grandmother was 60. And she was taking care of babies at the time, and it was hard. It was hard on my grandmother. It was really frustrating for me because I felt like I couldn't connect with my grandma. I could connect with her when it was the summer times, we were doing stuff that was cultural, but like I felt like she just didn't get it. But it was also being young and angry and ignorant and changing. But yeah, we, my family was on welfare, and there stems another issue. Is none of my friends were on welfare. None of them had experience. Like, I was super embarrassed to talk about that, to tell my friends, and there was only one friend growing up that knew, because also working at 12 as well as as well as having my other side of my family, they could never tell, because when I came to school, I was in, the cool clothes that we're in, or like I got a scooter when they were in. I had Pokemon cards, like I was a part of like those huge phases that happen in school, but is to not be embarrassed about it. And for me, it was huge. It was so stigmatizing, and I've internalized that, and I internalized racism, and I was my worst enemy for that. And I'm really recognizing this in the last few years. And so when my father passed away and I was already living on my own, they tried to put me in a foster home. I think that's what it is. I think that's what it was. It was the idea, the concept. I ended up belonging to a foster home for less than 31 days. Their culture was not like mine. They were a group of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I was struggling with the idea of being Catholic, being Buddhist because my parents, and being a normal religion. Like, I was like, I cannot add Jehovah's Witness into this Buddhist, Aboriginal, Catholic trying to figure out religion. And I decided, no, that's it. I went to my social worker, and I walked in. I had a letter ready, written, and I even spell checked it, had someone else read it, and I was like, politely, I demanded to live on my own, and I gave the list of reasons why. I told them, this is why I can do it, these are the resources, here is my support, this is how I'm going to do it. So I've been kind of in care, and so having done that, I realized there's a lot of screw-ups in systems. There's a lot of things that need to be changed, and so I'm on a provincial committee for the Federation Youth and Care Network. Having a
Federation for Youth and
Care Network. They're a support network for kids and for families that are Aboriginal, and for anyone who's in care that wants to start up a group, an organization in their local community, can go to these people and call or fax in Vancouver, and they can apply grant money for them to start their own programs. So now, stemming from that, I'm also working with a lady in co-founding and to build a nonprofit organization called the File Folder Project. And for those of you who don't know what it is, you can feel free to look it up on Facebook. There's a website. It's just simply thefilefolderproject.com, as is. And it was basically because an MP had written that we pay for Aboriginals and non-Aboriginals, but emphasis just on paying for them to be in care, and then we pay for them to be on the streets, because that's what's going to happen. And so the idea and the concept behind this, and we're going to launch it in January, is to talk about success stories. So youth from all over the States and from Canada. And there's been a couple of Aboriginal stories which have been beautiful for me because I'm the Aboriginal coordinator for the position or for the organization. And it's so wonderful to hear success stories, and it makes you feel like you're not the only one, and it makes you feel so good, and to really recognize you could identify with a lot of the struggles that that person has been through, and that you get it and you understand it. Is challenging that idea, challenging those stigmas that you can be Aboriginal, you can be non-Aboriginal, you can go through the foster care system and have your family live on welfare and have all these negative stereotypes, but still there's a positive life and positive story towards the end of that. And to be able to recognize that for yourself, though, I could sit here and I could speak for hours trying to encourage you to not do drugs and to not drink and stay in school and be cool, but it doesn't work like that. You yourself need to want to do that. You yourself need to want to be able to go on trips and do these things and go travel and do all these amazing things. Everything will fall into place, but you have to do it for yourself. And I can't, I can up talk and be so positive and sugarcoat it, but that I'm not going to sugarcoat. It's not, everything.
We have a question?
Yeah, we have a question
from
Tony on Adobe Connect. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay.
Okay.
Our goal at School District 54 is to increase our grad rates for Aboriginal students. What advice would you give to help us with this? And what do you see are the major reasons why Aboriginal students don't graduate?
Hi, Tony. I actually know Tony personally.
Oh.
amazing woman. I was thinking School District 54, that's Smithers. This is a big question for me, because I'm also researching it at an undergrad and potentially graduate level. And for me, I think sports is huge. And I say sports because, after school when you don't have anything to go do, kids will steal. Kids will go do B&Es to cars that have nothing in them. They will smoke pot. They will do nothing because they're bored at home, and their parents, and for some families, they don't have that infrastructure. And it's funny that Tony's actually asking this question, because Tony's one of the parents when I grew up, when I was a little girl, that I would hang out with her son. He's one of my best friends, and that was my something. That was my something to do after school, was for us to play sports and video games, and to recognize that a lot of Aboriginal students need that extra support, that extra programming, because they don't have that option of going home and hanging out with their parents and asking them how their day was, or for their parents to be interested, or just they have their own issues going on that they can't even deal with it. And so for me, I definitely recommend after school programming and social programming, but also a mentorship program. I think it's a beautiful concept. I think it's so amazing, and it doesn't even have to be an Aboriginal mentor. Just the idea that you have a mentor, because I can pinpoint 10 mentors that I've had in the journey of all this loss and grief, and I think mentorship in sports is a beautiful combination, and it's such a nice integration to have more success, and the extra tutoring programs, and for teachers to understand that you can put these programs in place and you can put these mentorship programs in place, but the problem is the genuineness behind that, and it takes work of the community, and if there's going to be mentors and programs after school, is that the people running them and the mentors that are chosen, they genuinely have to care. They have to care that I really want to help this student, I really want to help them, whether they're Aboriginal or not, because that's, again, the feeling of I'm loved, I matter, I care, I'm cared for, I can do this, and that's where I think you'll see a lot of change, and you'll see a lot of growth in Aboriginal communities. And I know that it is difficult in Smithers, but also cultural programming is really cool. There's a lot going on at the Friendship Center where kids who are labeled, at risk right now are doing drum making, and it's such a natural component to mental wellness as well as cultural wellness. I think it would be awesome to have a once a week after-school programming where the kids really take on mentorship, because I know the community, Smithers, very well, and I know that just like I do in Prince Rupert and here in Vancouver, is that there's a lot of respect to learning culture, and sometimes, you know, the initiation of that will have to be potentially be Aboriginal dominated to help run it and outsource the program at first. But I think as the program grows and you invite more people in, it'll be amazing. It would really change. Aboriginal or non-Aboriginal leaders to like run programs like these would be really great.
So, our young ladies in the room, what do you think? What do you think helped you through high school? What helped you be successful in high school? Sports. Because we have we have Alissa speaking from the north, and then we have Jessica from the interior. We have Amy from the island, so it's a diverse group in here of youth from different locations in the province, right? And different stories, and personally knowing, your families, that sports. And Amy, what do you think helped you in high school?
Programs at the Friendship Center. I sit on the youth council at the Victorian Friendship Center. They offer a ton of things, like they are running an 8-week program for like moccasin making and drum making and all that kind of stuff that you can do with like deer hide, because they went hunting and they're gonna go fishing. I'm actually missing Sawyer right now because I'm here.
So tying back the cultural pieces, then, in addition to the sports, that's interesting.
Which kind of brought me to another light about programming, and just some of the stuff that some of your Aboriginal students may deal with that you might not be able to recognize is the revitalization of culture. And that here, I kind of challenge some program norms, because a lot of people think that Aboriginal culture is about dancing and singing and medicine wheel and smudging. And that's a lot of the feel that I'm getting here in Vancouver, and I've talked a lot about it with some Aboriginal students, and not just over like casual talk, but like in-depth talk. Like I know an Aboriginal student, some old roommates, one of them is an HKIN student, one is not a potential, a future 2014 graduate, first ever Aboriginal solder student.
Oh, what?
Solders of business at UBC. He'll be the first one in 2014.
Wow.
And we were talking about this, and we're like, Aboriginal students need cultural programming that are cultural to their culture. Just like as if someone was Vietnamese or French or Filipino or anything, Spanish, they're each distinct in their own way. And so I grew up here now in Vancouver, and I'm just figuring it out, and I'm thinking I've been surrounded by medicine wheel teachings and the 4 sacred teachings of medicine that I'm like, is this a part of my culture? Like, I don't know. So I called my grandma, and I told her, I was like, so proud that I'm learning all of this. And my grandma's like, it's not in our culture to smudge, Alissa. Do you know that? And I was like, no. And that's just the reality, because different Aboriginal people are like learning. But to elaborate that on, it's also being incorporated and indoctrinated in a lot of Aboriginal practices, because it's being so socially pressured on non-Aboriginal people, because that's what they think. And so to run these programs or to do things, or even Aboriginal students yourself, it's okay to not know what your culture is. It's okay to incorporate other components of other cultures, whether it be prairie or west coast, or as long as it makes you feel good, as long as it is making you feel that this is what I feel like culture is to me, because no one can take that away from you. Yeah.
I've actually got a comment here from somebody online who calls herself G at FNTC. And she says, I used to have a youth when I ran a youth program here in Vancouver. I guess she's referring to mentorship.
Okay.
Just going back a few minutes there. She told me that she'd volunteer for as many things as possible so that she didn't have time to party with friends. The busier she keeps herself, the less she would use the time to casually socialize. Her social time was with other active youth volunteering together.
and thinking about that, and I'm smiling about that and not smiling at the same time, because I think about that. This is totally true. This is so sound that I do things because when I moved here, a lot of my friends that moved here jumped into modeling and still model, and that's awesome. That's great. If that's your, and do the whole club promoting thing and do all these crazy things that are readily available to you in Vancouver. That as I went through my transplant, I recognized I can go out and I can party and have fun and not drink and do all that, but I also need to fill other stuff that I want to do. And I realized that as I grew, partying and stuff like that wasn't what I was really into. And so I did volunteer a lot, and you do meet amazing people through volunteer. And you'll be surprised, the more you volunteer and the more that you jump into different organizations, that you meet amazing people. And it's positive people, because everyone who volunteers, they're finding something they want to do, they want to make a change, and I definitely recommend it. Totally. And even if your community doesn't have a great support system in terms of volunteering at the Friendship Center or something, there's so many things. You can volunteer at a local animal shelter, you can volunteer at a thrift store, you can volunteer, there's ways to incorporate volunteering that can be positive for you, and I think it's so amazing. It's so good. But
did we have a second part to that question? Did we answer the second part?
Yeah, I didn't know if there was
It was more of a comment, not so much a question.
Oh, no, not
okay.
that question, but the previous question.
Oh, sorry,
Tony's question. There was 2 parts to his question.
Her part.
Or her question. Sorry, Tony.
It's okay. Let me just scroll back up here.
Yeah, no worries.
It was
okay. So again, I'll just read the whole thing again.
Yeah.
So our goal at School District 54 is to increase our grad rates for Aboriginal students. What advice would you give us to help us with this? So increasing the graduation rates. And then the second part was, what do you see as the major reasons why Aboriginal students don't graduate?
The difficult one.
That's a tough one.
Because it's personal. It's me. It's youth that I work with, and for me, I didn't want to for me, I can give my story, then maybe elaborate on that for me, but I didn't want to not graduate because I was scared. I didn't want it to be another statistic. I didn't want it to be an embarrassment on one side of my family, and there's a lot of personal in-depth issues, but I think for some students, when they don't graduate, is they just they don't see the point. They don't see the end goal. They don't see, it's just a lot of it is emotional baggage that's going on at home, and the inability to cope with it, and to work around that, to solve that. It is going to take more than just adding programs. It's going to take more than doing that. It's, again, to care and ways to change it, and the rates from up north, and the reason why I don't think that they're as high, unfortunately, as they should be, is because as the dysfunction continues in Aboriginal communities, and as these youth go to school and graduate with each other, not graduate, is that they're feeding off of each other because they have nothing else to feed off of. They have only what is being taught and what's happening in their communities, and feeling lost social identity, lost cultural identity, and I think that's one of the key factors why they're not graduating at a higher rate. I don't know, is that...
The effects, a lot of them are second or third generations removed from the parents or the grandparents who went to residential school, right? And I think there's a combination of factors that play for the success rate. I look back on my own experience, and there is an First Nations professor with Thompson River University who did a survey, and he followed up with me probably about 10 years ago, and he told me about, he was working on a thesis, and and it was on, he had monitored me and the group I began with in high school from grade 8 to 10, and this is going back 25 years, so that's how long ago I was, in high school. So anyhow, he monitored a group of us, and so when I think back to that point in time, grade 8 to 10, there was about 30 First Nations students in the local high school. So by the time I had graduated, I caught up to 2 students that were in grades above me. I think one was in 2 grades above me, and one was in a grade above me. So by the time I had graduated, there was 3 graduates that year, as opposed to 30. So what's the percentage? 10%? 10%? Less than 10%. 3%? 3%? Anyhow, somebody got a number for me? Sitting in the classroom, what percentage that is? 3 out of 30. And
that's 10%. You're
10%.
right.
10%.
Yeah,
So when he had called me up, he had tracked me down and said, I'm completing this paperwork. I'm just wondering if I can use your name and your contacts, because I actually want to include you in on a report. And I said, well, tell me what it is first. And then he told me the background of how he was tying into his paper the social problems, you know, the alcoholism, the status, the parenting, just all the social determinants of health, you know, the housing, like Alissa had talked about, not having a house and being kicked out at a very young age. I mean, for me, that would be hard to comprehend, but it's the reality of what happens in First Nations communities. So I guess I agree with Alissa. It's hard to pinpoint just one area that is a barrier for increasing graduation rates. Every person is probably different. I mean, I had a strong family support and my mom threatening me. She threatened me in grade 10 and told me, you're going to graduate in 2 years, and I'm going to walk you to every single classroom. If I see another D on your report card, I'm going to walk you to every single classroom. And I thought, oh, my mom would just totally do that. She would grab me by the elbow and walk me to every class. And it's not something I wanted, but it's that social family background and support that I had that I attribute to this day, that you know, where my success was in high school. So every case is actually different. It's hard to pinpoint one area of
And you just it kind of is a nice transition and to what I was thinking. Actually, I was thinking of me growing up in Smithers as you were telling that story, and specific parents or specific teachers that really pulled at me. And the idea is that it really can take one teacher, it can take one friend, it can take and how I actually stopped smoking pot, because I started really young. I'm not gonna sit here and lie to anyone. I started in grade 4 to grade 7.
That's the boundaries, but not having the social acceptance at home.
Yeah, and it was like I wanted to fit in with my sister. I wanted to do what she was doing, and she was 18, and I was like, I want to feel loved. I want to spend time with my sister, and that was the only way that I could spend time with my sister. And stemming from that, how it all stopped, it was one person. It was my best friend, who is more like a brother to me now, and him and another fellow. You know, it was during a baseball tournament. It was like we were like 12, 13. Like baseball was huge, and like it's huge in Smithers and it's huge in Prince Rupert. And they said it to me. I came so high, and I was playing back catcher, and they were like, "What are you doing? Like, this is our semifinals." Like, and they were like, "It's either us or the pot." And at that moment, I was so scared. I was so scared to lose the one thing that was stable. And for anyone, that could be school, that could be relationships with your cousins or your families. But for me, that was them. They were my stability along with their families at that time. And I was like, oh my God. And from that day, I've never smoked pot. Literally from that day, ever. And you know, it can take one person. And for school, being in Smithers, it took one teacher. Maybe two. I'm going to say two. It took 2 teachers for me to really figure out what I was doing. And one of them was an elementary school teacher, and I was in grade 6, and he just like encouraged me all the time to play sports. And another teacher, a female teacher actually from School District 54, her name is Miss Lytle, and really guided me through the transitions of like what was going on, but it took that extra step. It doesn't, you know, to help a student is difficult, to help a student that's dealing with socioeconomic and racism and all of that. It's going to take a little more than a Band-Aid fix solution, and that's just, but the message that it can be only one person, it can be to really support a student to increase those graduation rates.
So I guess turning it back on maybe some of the classrooms involved, what do you see as students, as a positive support in your system and your staying in school? It would be nice to be able to hear a couple comments about, what helps you and what do you recognize as your support system that helps you stay in school?
Give them a few minutes.
Yeah,
Sure.
We'll give you a few minutes. And we'll just sing a song while you're kind of
Sure.
chatting in the room.
Take it away, Crystal.
Way-oh, hey-oh, way-oh, hey-oh. Okay, there's has to be some feedback now.
I'm just thinking. I'm thinking about work. I'm thinking about school.
Yes, your mind is racing.
Well, I have a comment or kind of a question.
Yeah.
Can you speak up, Crystal?
Okay, your story is pretty amazing. You've been through, to me, I feel like you've been through a lifetime with somebody who's like 50. And I think of like all of, I'll call them like black cloud moments where you've had like a loss and death. And you have really, really good energy. So has it always been like that, or has there been a shift somewhere where you were like mad or upset or angry, where to a point now where even in a bad situation you make it good? Because to me, there's no point in being negative or angry. That my thought is that you should be grateful. And I always try and start my day with something that I'm grateful for, and at the end of the night. And I'm wondering if at some point in your, to me, you're still, I look at you and you're a baby.
I know, I get Crystal too. I get that.
So has there been at some point where you were like dealing with all of that black cloud stuff and then realized that you had to make that shift to just, even if it's a bad situation, you have to find the good?
It's interesting. It's interesting that you say that, 'cause someone just asked me this yesterday. And because we were thinking, we have a discussion panel. I also sit on the Aboriginal Steering Committee. it's a province-wide committee with all universities encompassing. And I was talking about it. I was trying to think, and I really don't know when that moment was. I know it was when I was. It was when I transitioned to, or sorry, it was the moment that I saw, sorry, I'm like thinking of my thoughts. It was the moment when I saw my father's body in his casket. It is the most unreal and surreal thing to experience a loss, to experience someone in your family, but to experience at 15, to look at someone in a casket and it being your father, and not being able to celebrate Father's Day or my Sweet 16 or graduation and all these amazing things that you go through in your life. And it was like, my dad would not want me to be like this. It was that if it was my dad, if it was my grandmother, like none of your family members, genuinely, no one wants you to be unhappy. No one wants you to experience that. And so I really thought about it, and it was more of, it was more of a fake for the first year of pretending to be happy, pretending to be optimistic, because that was my coping mechanism. I was like, I'm gonna fake my way to happiness. Like this is how it's gonna happen. And eventually, it was my younger siblings. I have 10, and
Wow.
through adoption, through my
yeah.
native side, through my
Okay,
Vietnamese
okay.
side, like there's a bit of and it was like recognizing that when my father passed away, I was carrying him in my arms, and he was only, I think he was 16 months at the time, or like 12 months or something. No, that should be smaller than that. I would say 10 months. He was like 10 months years old, and I was like, I have to be the change for them. I have to. And it took a lot of like personal strength. It took a lot of nights thinking about this, and at first it was being angry. I was like, I'm 15. I experienced every type of loss and failure, and I was like, I want to be like my normal friends who can go home and just relax on the couch and like have dinner made for them and laundry done. How amazing would that be in my mind? But it was after my father passed away. Like it was a really like eye opener that like I had to do something. I had to change it. And if I wanted to be happy, I had to do something about it. And it's not easy. It's definitely not. And I am human. I am real. I don't sparkle. I have my bad days. I really do. And you know what? And it's keeping your end goal and my end goal in perspective. And that my end goal is I want to get my master's in public and social policy. I want to look at social programming and government policies and how it really fits, how it really works, not to just have it on paper, not to have something written on paper, and I want it to actually be sustainable and feasible and it work and not just take and not just have government money thrown into programs that don't work because there wasn't proper consideration, there wasn't items put into play.
You are a warrior.
You are a warrior.
Do we have any comments from the classroom? Oh, really?
You have that elaborate story.
Yeah. Okay, I guess what I'm looking at is the choice of career. If we can now jump to where you are today.
Yeah.
And the choice of careers and talking a bit because you're SFU and I actually met one of your mentors last night from Langara.
Oh,
Larry.
He was
Larry. I was at a career fair and
he's on this right now. Is he not? I don't know.
He is actually up at the First Nations Education Steering Committee conference here being hosted. But in the support systems and what you looked at, because that's a scary thing. That's the reality of moving to Vancouver. I mean, I'm a grown adult moving to Vancouver, let alone somebody young or a student moving here for the first time, right? You know, coming to a university or college in the surrounding area. So let's talk a bit about the career choice and the supports you found here in the city.
It's an embarrassing story, actually. And you know, it's I call him my brother now. His name's Travis. He's one of my best friends growing up, and he was really into policing. And I only went to Langara to play badminton. And in my mind, this is really embarrassing to mention. I was like, I have to go to school if I want to play badminton for you? Like, I was like, this is ridiculous. I was like, I'm thinking I could just like go and play badminton and go in the provincials, and it would be all fine and dandy. And so they were like, you have to pick a program, and I was talking with my brother, and I was like, I have to pick a program. Like, I was thinking in my mind, I was like, what program? So I'm looking at the programs, like, women's studies, like, no, like, geography, no. I was like, sciences, no. And I was like, looking, and, he wanted to become he is going to become an RCMP, and I was like, criminology, just follow what my brother's doing. It was funny, because I took components of that, and you really, I feel like I picked that program because I thought it was my brother, but it's also deeper than that. It's having contact. I had to have had something that drove me into that direction, and for me it was change. And I haven't had any experience with the justice system at all, but I have had an experience with a police officer that used to live in Smithers. His name was Mike Cook, and his wife was Amy Cook, and they were neighbors to me, and they were also my something to do after school when I was locked out of my house like 3 times a week, and I would just like wander over to their house, and like they left a key there for me to get in their gate, and I would like sit outside their house for an hour after school and like play with their dog, and they'd invite me in and I'd have dinner with them. So that's the beauty, and that's what I want in changes. And I chose it, and I ended up loving it. I ended up falling in love with school, and I never thought I would say this. I never thought in a million years I would say I love going to class and I love school, because trust me, this was not the case when I was in Smithers or Prince Rupert. And so from there I finished Langara for 2 years, and Larry was really encouraging me, and he was like, hey, it's as much as we love you and as much as you're our little young one here, we need to kick you out. Like, you need to go to university. You need to like go do your degree. And I was like, oh man. And so I strive for to get into the criminology program, and I will be accepted. I'm conditional acceptance right now because I'm missing statistics. So.
That's what you're taking.
And so it's been an interesting journey because the group at Langara, I can't even explain. Like, I could probably cry about this, the beauty of students that are there. I have a good close of 5 students, and the beauty of having Aboriginal spaces and that support, because that support at school will always be there for you when you come here, and because there's a lot of difficult stuff that happens outside of it, is that you don't need to explain any of the pre-stuff. You don't need to talk about residential school. You don't need to talk about culture. You don't need to talk about racism. Like, every angry thing that you feel or anything that happened, you're like, you get it. Let's move on. We can talk about, like, making sarcasm about it. You can talk about actual life, like actual school. And that was the beauty of Langara College, and that was the beauty of the Aboriginal gathering space that they have there, was to have that. And it's the one place that you can go to vent on campus. And by vent, I mean vent. Like, there was days, like, for example, when I walked in to talk to them about needing a transplant, I literally nonchalant walked in and looked at the first person I told, actually, was my donor, my future donor. And I was like, 80, I'm dying. And at first she was like, don't worry, like, semester's almost over, like, it's gonna be it's gonna be okay, Lisa, like, you're a little dramatic sometimes, like, don't worry, it'll be okay. And I'm thinking, no, like, I'm actually dying, like, my kidneys are dying. And, like, everyone in the Langara room, no one treated me as if I was different. No one was like, you know, blah blah blah. Like, everyone remained in the room and just kind of looked at me with, like, compassion, and were super, like, just listening to me, because it didn't hit me, but 20 minutes after talking, and as soon as my donor, like, we didn't know she was going to be my donor at the time, like, hugged me, boom, tears in my eyes, trickling, and I was like, I'm dying, and I was being, like, so dramatic about it. And
it's a big thing.
It's a big thing. It is a big thing. And so at the time, you know, they made jokes about me being sensitive, and I'm like, okay, I can take that. I'm very sensitive, but, you know, jumping to SFU, I hit the same experience as if I was moving from a small town to Vancouver, because when I jumped to SFU, I hated it. And there's many professors at SFU and many people there that know that I hated it. I hated my first year, because not only was I dealing with a transplant, going to Langara and SFU at the same time, going to the hospital 12 hours a week, as well as, you know, my ex-boyfriend, he chose a different path. Unfortunately, he cheated on me after my transplant, about a week after my transplant, and I was like, what is going on with my life? And so I was like, I'm going to go to the native room. I was like, of course that'll make me feel better. But the idea is that when Aboriginal students make that transfer, some of them, even at SFU, like, don't really recognize they haven't had previous experience. And a lot of the students that jump from college to university are at a different place in their life, and that's what I'm finding. I'm still, like, one of the youngest students at SFU as I was at Langara, and it's taken some time, but we've finally started to build a community there, and it's been a really difficult process. I don't know how many times for the first time in my life I wanted to quit something. And for the first time ever last year after my transplant, up until a couple of weeks ago, I was like, I'm done. I quit, like, blah, 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 like, I'm over this. And you know what? Then, like, scholarships started pouring in, and, like, letters about how, like, amazing I am poured in. And I, like, am so appreciative of, like, all the scholarships, because for me, it wasn't about the money, even though I definitely suffered financially the year after my the months and days following after my transplant. It was that they saw something in me that I was missing or lacking, and so that it was, I can do this, I can figure this out, and it's been interesting. And so the supports at SFU and at school, I recognize that they're there, but you have to make it, and you have to own it, you have to make it your own, and to create these programs, and you can make things happen. Students, and even students in high school, don't believe things can happen. I can give you an example. So, not to give you the whole history of it, but unfortunately, the money allocated to make an Aboriginal space at SFU was misallocated. And that happens. Is it right? No. But, you know, that's political issues that I definitely don't want to mention here. I want to talk about the positive light of that, and that's the fact that students, you know, wrote a letter to the president, explained the situation. Okay, so we've worked in circle discussion about that, and and we're finally going to be creating an Aboriginal space, but really owning it as if it's ours. It is ours. It will belong to us. It's a good place to meet new students, to find your culture. You never know who is also Haida or, Haisla or something. Like, you never know. If you want to learn about your culture, it's the best place to go. It really is. And you can make things happen out of this Aboriginal space. Like our organization, we paid for drum making, we've paid for all of these amazing things, but it's the students who make it happen.
That's right.
It's as if the students in high school, you can make it happen. If you want to learn how to make a drum, if you want to do moccasins, if you want an elder to come into your class, talk to the Aboriginal Support Network. Like, these things can happen. It's just, it takes one student. And for me, it's taken 2 students at SFU for us to be like, okay, let's do this.
She's a go-getter.
Yeah, I am human though, I swear. Like, I've been hearing that all week, actually. You were the 3rd person to say that to me.
So, I mean, Alissa's, her energy is always like that. She's probably even on her worst day. Actually, how I met Alissa was I was actually calling down for my own personal, drop-in basketball, and Alissa's on the other end, probably looking at the call display, saying, "Where are you calling from? Where are you calling from?" And I'm like, "I'm calling on my own because I want to come to drop-in basketball." "But where are you calling from? Which business are you associated with?"
Because I recognize the St. Paul's number.
Yes, and she was so full of energy. I just had to give her the lowdown on where I was calling from, and then, "What do you do there?" And then after that, a great relationship was built. So now we have this reciprocal relationship, and this is how she is. She's full of energy, full of life, wonderful, and we're coming to an end. Is there any comments from any of the classrooms? And in addition to that, you're 22, turning 23.
No.
You're 20.
This is my last day of being 20. I'll be 21 tomorrow.
Isn't that amazing?
And everyone in the room's opening their mouth now.
So she is 20, turning 21. So actually, she's 20 days and 20 years old and 364 days.
Yeah.
So I think we should close this. We're in here, and we're going to sing her happy birthday.
Oh boy.
Ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lisa. Happy birthday to you. And I really appreciate the time that you've taken to participate in our youth circle today. It does mean a lot, and it does mean a lot, the good work that you're doing overall for the youth in the province, because you sit on some very provincial, province-wide committees for youth, Aboriginal youth, in addition to the committees at Anya. I know you're involved with the Urban Native Youth Association in downtown Vancouver, all the work that you're doing at the Friendship Center, the work that you're doing for students at SFU, and that's only to name a few, which is a lot of the provincial work that she's doing. So I really appreciate you sharing your story, because I think it's important and valuable for other youth to hear it coming from youth, that, the message you gave today about keeping that goal in your mind, knowing that you want something, and asking for the help, and that there are resources out there. It's finding those resources and being comfortable for asking. So do you have any closing remarks?
How to sum this all up? I always like to keep it in the perspective of your mind and your body, and listening to your body and listening to your mind, in the sense that if you know something's not right, make a change. Do something about it. If you feel instinctively this is wrong, or you're so unhappy and that you're in a place that is dark and it's not fulfilling you, make a change and ask for help, and everything is possible. I didn't ask for help with my transplant. My friends just kind of jumped on board. But having said that, the help that followed that, I, for the first time, needed to ask for help in my life, and it was so difficult. To do it, Like, honestly, if I can go from dropping out of school for most parents really thinking that I was going to be the first girl to get pregnant, drop out of school, and having their kids not want to hang out with me, to being almost at a graduate national level, like, anything honestly is possible. Not to make this so cheesy, but it totally is. It's realistic, it's your mind, it's the opportunity, and you giving yourself that opportunity with your mind.
There's just a couple of closing comments here. One's from Sandra. Thanks for setting this up. And thanks to Alissa. That was great. Happy birthday. And then Tony says, thank you so much. This was great. So proud of you, Alissa. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
And maybe just we can mention what's coming up.
Yes, I was actually just going to mention.
Big Twilight.
We do have a couple of presentations coming up in the near future. Can you help me out here, Catherine, on the 27th or 29th? I'm sorry, I didn't grab my book. We do have a website. What is it? The Learning Circle. The links we've been sending out to all of your instructors. We do have William Bellew coming to our circle by the end of the month, and his lead-in role he was one of those historical wolves from Twilight in the original movie. So he'll be coming to the circle next Thursday. So don't miss out on him. He has a fabulous story to share as well, and where he's at today. And he actually comes to us from Eskedum, which is Alkali Lake up in the north. And after that, December 12th, we have Trevor Mack, who is doing his Bachelor of, I believe he's in media over at University of Capilano. And in addition, and he's the Ice Games winner. He's our First Nations Ice Game Canada winner. And he'll be competing in California, I believe it's by the end of winter 2013. So in the next 4 to 5 months. So he's training hard. And he was actually, his sponsor is Red Bull, I believe, one of his sponsors. Are those our next 2 sessions?
And then there's one more, Aboriginal e-mentoring, December 6th.
Oh, right. When we talk about mentoring, Alissa talked about mentoring. We have a program in one of the other departments here at UBC to help high school students stay in the health sciences, the science, biology, what's the other one with the tables? Chemistry, to stay in those academic courses through high school. So it's an online mentoring where you're attached to a tutor in your area, and it's all computer based. So that is on the
December 6th.
December 2nd.
6th.
Sorry. Check our website. Stay linked in by our website, and I thank you for all your patience and participation. Have a good day. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Oh, yeah.